Today I want to share with you the very best open field marches in Rise of Kingdoms. Whether you're using 5, 6, or 7 marches, these are the literal best you can bring. And this is not based off of just my experiences. This is not only based off of the experiences of the Smash Squad, but looks at what players in other alliances that are performing really well are doing as well. So stick around in this video for the actual best marches you can use in the open field in Rise of Kingdoms. Hello my friends and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, and today's video is sponsored by the makers of Rise of Kingdoms. And when Zhuge landed in game, I expertised him immediately and started using him in my murder ball. And I pulled down a cool 16 million kills, which is half as many as Yoda got with Zhuge. Yeah, he got like 32 million kills, which is insane. My overall kill point gain for this KVK is a little over 3 billion, which is a lot. So in this video, I want to share with you the very best marches. And as I said before, this is not only based off of my experience and what I was using, but many others as well. So let's jump into Tier Maker and put together these combinations, since it'll be easier to visualize everything all on the screen at once. Here we are in Tier Maker, a tool that makes it really easy to visualize all the different combinations. And we're going to start with what I used, then talk about what osssNo used, and then finally, we'll go through what 6 marches or 5 marches ought to look like. So we'll jump all the way up top here with our Nevsky and Joan. I mean, obviously an amazing combo. You put these two together and you don't split them. From here, let's just do the next cavalry combo, XY with William. There you have your 2 cavalry marches. That's what's meta, and I don't think that's at all disputed. From here, we can start to do some archer combos. Now, I used Boudica with Honda Tadakatsu, and then I also used Zhuge with Nebu. This I found to work extremely well. Zhuge should be the primary to get his AoE debuff applied as quickly as possible. From here, we can start to look at infantry. You've got Guan with Sargon. Even though this isn't the best Guan combo or the best Sargon combo, you use it because the next thing you can do is Tariq ibn Ziyad with Skippy Prime. Now, I did them in that order. And the reason I did Tariq ibn Ziyad as the primary is that I was rallying, man. And I didn't want to have to switch my gear and switch my armaments and all that crap all the time. I wanted to just be able to set rallies as soon as they said, set a rally, please. And the only times I couldn't do that is when I was out fielding with that march. And often I would just use 6 marches and leave that behind or have a rally penned to be able to do that. So those two paired together is the way that I did it. Again, ideally, Skippy Prime will be the primary commander, so you apply the health debuff more quickly. So ideally, you'd run it like that, as opposed to how I did it like that. Lastly, Trajan and Ethelflaed. Really great combo. Now, a part of the reason I ran these combos and ran them the way that I did is because we were in an Orleans version of KVK, which has auxiliary skills. But if I were going into another KVK, I don't think I would change this up much from what I had done here. The only thing I would do differently is if I had expertised Henry. And let me show you how I would change up these combinations if I had expertised Henry. Because I'm going to put Honda's Hatakatsu on the bench. And normally, by the way, I might use Artemisia here. But I had her skill used as an auxiliary in the Orleans version of KVK, which made her unusable. You get their skills, but they become unusable. So anyways, we're going to put Artemisia back to the bench. And what osssNo did is he paired a little bit like this. And he did basically everything I was doing, except a little switcheroo with the archers. Boudica with Zhuge and then Henry with Nebu. And I like bringing in Henry in particular because, look, if you're 7 marching, you should be swarming garrisons, and Henry's just great for swarming garrisons. And he's really tanky in the field. And for whatever reason, Nebu just always melts, man. He always gets decimated. So I like this combination of the Henry primary with the support tree and the tankiness that Henry offers, with the punch and area of effect damage of Nebu. And as we look at this list, it's easy to understand what makes for a good march. There's several things you need. You need march speed, you need damage, ideally in the form of area of effect damage, and you need tankiness. And that's what makes for a good march. So if we look at the first march in here, you've got Nevsky and Joan. Okay, so Nevsky brings your tankiness, and Joan brings your area of effect damage and punch. You've got XY and William. Okay, neither of them is particularly tanky, and this combo suffers for that, but they both have really good area of effect damage. In fact, William does an area of effect party buff, giving your team defense and rage. Okay. You've got Boudica and Zhuge Liang. Boudica is your tankiness. Zhuge Liang is your area of effect punch. You've got Henry bringing your tankiness. Nebu bringing your area of effect punch. You've got Guan bringing your area of effect damage. And Sargon bringing a bunch of tanky stats. Do you see how this works? You've got Skippy bringing a lot of tankiness. And you've got Tariq ibn Ziyad bringing a lot of punch, pure punch. And then you've got Trajan bringing big buffs. And then Ethelfled, who is there for punch and debuffs. Every combo has that magic to it, and that's how you make great combos. So these are the 7 marches that, at least at one point in the KVK, I got hit by osssNo, and I was like, what's he using? Exactly this. So if you wanted to bring this back, however, to 6 marches or 5 marches, what does the best look like for that? And I want to just give you a couple options here, okay? A couple things that work really great, because you could also bring in Isong or Artemisia or Honda Tadakatsu, and Honda could go in a number of these places if you had him, and he'd do extremely well. In fact, for a lot of early game players, right, like they've got commanders like, now I've got to try to find him, but you know, if you had Mehmed with a double relic, man, that dude could do work, and he could do work in so many of these combos. For example, you could do Skippy with Mehmed, and I think that would be amazing. Okay, so we'll talk more when we get down to the 5 marches about what some of these really great substitutions could be if you don't have a certain commander. So first and foremost, if you're going down to 6 marches, what do you cut? Not a coincidence that I put Trajan and Ethel at the bottom here. Not that they aren't amazing, but a part of the value of Trajan and Ethel is that they are buffing a bunch of your marches. And the reason that Trajan and Ethel performs poorly in a 5-march murder ball compared to a 7-march murder ball is that when your marches start to die off, now you're buffing less of your own stuff. And if you're playing with a team and you don't care about just buffing your marches, you care about buffing the team, then that's fine. You still get benefit from that potentially. But the less targets you have for your buff to apply to from Trajan, the less value you're getting. So that is the first march I would get rid of, is the Trajan Ethel. And that is why that's listed as the 7th march. But I do need to rearrange these to talk about what 6th march I would get rid of. And personally, the 6th march that I would get rid of is going to be, now it's listed number 4, so this is kind of awkward. Maybe I'll bump this back up and do this the other way, okay? What I would get rid of is Henry and Nebu. And the reason I would get rid of Henry and Nebu is that they actually don't have any amazing debuffs. They're just doing raw damage. And raw damage is in many ways replaceable. And I'm not saying it's bad damage, I'm just saying it's replaceable. Like, do I want to get rid of a Guan silence and a skill damage taken debuff? No. Do I want to get rid of a health debuff? No. Right? So when we look at this list, it's like, wait, what am I getting rid of? I think it's just the raw damage. So the raw damage leaves the party with Henry and Nebu. So in my opinion, your number 1 murder ball in the game, if you're just bringing 5 marches, is going to be Nevsky and Joan, XY and William. You've got Boudica Zhuge Liang. You've got Skippy Prime with Tariq ibn Ziyad, or you could bring a bunch of different things, Honda Tadakatsu or Mehmed. And then you've got Guan with Sargon. And I think that's a really, really great way to run it. Now, there's a bunch of other things you could do. Like you might say, bro, I don't have 2 infantry. I'm not interested in 2 infantry marches, right? And if that's the case, like, and you're using archers, you could bring Henry and Nebu back in, and you could be using, you know, like Guan with Skippy, and I have used that during this KVK as well, and it's of course a great march, although a little outpaced these days. So there's a bunch of other ways you could run it, depending on what your equipment looks like. And I think now more than ever, it's a really great time to be investing in 2 sets of each troop type, and then the last thing you do is potentially a leadership set. And now we actually have a leadership set you could do, as opposed to what I've done, which is the infantry gear and then talent it for leadership, which is really expensive. I did that project right before they released leadership gear. GG. So that would be, in my opinion, your best 5 marches. And again, when we talk about swap outs, Mehmed can go in a number of places. Mehmed can be a substitute for Tariq ibn Ziyad. And if you're thinking, should I invest in Tariq ibn Ziyad for the open field? I would say no, definitely not. He's a great rally commander, and he's great in the field now, but he is like the first, when you look at this set of 5 marches up top here, he is the first commander to go from this list. He only does damage. His debuff is like a rage gain debuff, which is fine, but he is like the first commander to get eliminated from this list. So if you're thinking, do I invest in Tariq Ibn Ziyad because he's here? No, I would say no. New infantry will replace him. So if you don't have Tariq Ibn Ziyad, you just use Mehmed Man, or you use Honda Sarakatsu. Super easy. For archers, if you don't have your Zhuge Liang yet, right? Like you've got Isong, you've got Artemisia. Another great combo if you wanted and you were going old school and you're like, man, you know, I have 1 infantry march and it looks like this, okay? And you're saying, you know, okay, I got 2 archer marches here, right? You could always fall back on Nebu with Isong. I think that's a really squishy combo these days, but I think it's great damage. That's another way you could go if you wanted to, right? You could also do Boudica with Isong and Zhuge Liang with Nebu. I think this also would just be extremely powerful if you're running multiple archer marches, and I can certainly recommend it. So there's a lot of ways you can really mix this up in order to fit your needs and fit what you have. One other combination, right, that you could do is that Artemisia, which I really like with the Boudica. Really great combo. So there's a bunch of swap outs, if you needed to, that you could pull in to make your ball work and to get a lot of value from that. So let's bring it back to the very best 7, however, and talk about the commanders that I think are the ones at most risk of being replaced. So if we rearrange this back to how we had it, okay, we'll bring Henry and Nebu together as the archer combo. We bring Skippy back down, Sargon in. I think when we look at this list, which commanders are most likely to get replaced in the open field, I think there's some really, really obvious candidates here. I think one really obvious candidate for a near-term replacement is, as I mentioned, Tariq Ibn Ziyad. He is not doing enough in this murder ball, and he gets away with it because he's just really punchy. And for now, with Skippy Prime, that works, but I think he's on the chopping block for sure. I also think that right now, there's like not exactly a great replacement for the Ethelfled, but at some point, I think she could be on the chopping block as well. And in terms of new commanders we might get into the game and what might come soon to replace things that we have on here, if we look at a couple other weak commanders, I think the weakest archer on this board right now is the Nebu. A new AoE damage archer could be really cool, but we just got one. So I think these guys with archers are probably secure for a while, that we won't see a change. But between the Henry and the Nebu, I think you're more likely to be hanging on to your Henry in the future than your Nebu. And in terms of the weakest cavalry commander, I think the weakest cavalry commander on this board is probably the XY. I think if you could replace this with area of effect damage that's a bit more tanky, that would be just way better with the William. But I also think that the William area of effect damage buffing your team is so good that I can't imagine that leaving your team anytime soon. So those are your weakest commanders probably, is your XY, your Ethel, I think could stand to be replaced. Your Tariq Ibn Ziyad is your number 1 weakest in this list. And then also I think Nebu is primed for replacement, but because we just got archers, it'll be a while before something like that happens. Of course, at this point, the conversation is really starting to dive into the investment tier list that I'll be releasing later this week. So if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, consider doing so you don't miss out on the legendary investment tier list, the very best commanders to put your sculptures in right now in Rise of Kingdoms. These are the safest, longest lasting investments. And if you want to see the last time I released that list, card will be in the end screen in just a second.